Good evening, friends, and a very warm welcome to you all once again on Monday Moods with Samvad. Samvad, as all of you are aware, is a national initiative for child protection, mental health, and psychosocial care located at the Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry at NIMHANS. We meet on Monday Moods with Samvad a couple of times each month to discuss various issues on child mental health, psychosocial care, related issues of child protection, education, and law. So essentially, Samvad adopts a transdisciplinary approach to child mental health and protection work. And April, with Autism Day and being the month of Children for Autism, has had for Monday Moods sessions relating to autism. A couple of weeks ago, we had Dr. John and Dr. Shekhar on a lifespan approach to autism. And today we have a session titled Transparency and Inclusion, Key Imperatives in Supporting Children with Neurological, but also Neurodevelopmental Disabilities. We have with us our very own Dr. Shekhar Sheshadri, of course, to chair this session. We also have an exceedingly interesting person with us today. I'd like us all to welcome Dr. Seema Lal, who is the founder of Together We Can. So Seema, who recently finished her PhD at the Vrije University at Amsterdam, has been working extensively and for many years on issues relating to neurodevelopmental disability. Her thesis itself was on making lived experiences matter, understanding the journey of mothers of autistic children in India. She is a mental health professional with about 2 decades of professional experience working in non-governmental and private sector institutions. She has been working in the areas of training, direct work with children, where mental health education, disability, and schooling are concerned. As I mentioned, she's also the founder of Together We Can, an advocacy forum that supports social issues and causes. The PIL filed by the forum, which I hope Seema will be talking about today, was instrumental in bringing in guidelines for regulation of therapy centers in Kerala, which is the first in the country. She also works as a consultant with the Banyan on a pilot project that looks at formulating comprehensive community-based mental health and social care program initiatives in collaboration with the government of Kerala. Her recent petition with the Kerala State Commission for Protection of Child Rights led to an order mandating training and sensitization of those involved with National Institute of Open Schooling. So as you can see, Seema comes from a very rich experience, friends, not just in the area of core mental health and disability issues, which of course she works on, and issues relating to parenting, direct interventions with children, but we have her very specially on our forum today to take us through her journey as a mental health professional who also has played such a role in advocacy for some of the most vulnerable children that we work with, that is children with disability. So welcome, Seema. We are delighted to have you. And Shekhar, over to you.
Thank you very much. For those of you who have come to the Samvad office space, we have a whole set of posters that are put on our windows. And one of the posters is a comment that was made by Reverend Desmond Tutu. And the quote goes like this: if an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you call yourself neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Often when we speak of meta-minorities, we look at this whole social dispensation, the adult world, the child world, the urban child, the rural child, the child, a neurotypical child, a child with disability, a boy child with disability and a girl child with disability, mild disability, severe disability, and what provisions exist for a family to access the kind of services that would provide for a lifespan or a life range of care so that they reach some level of mainstreaming and some level of meaningful existence, and their sentience comes to fruition. I'll leave you with that thought, and I'm going to cut to a certain reality that I had strangely encountered a couple of years ago when I was actually heading the Department of Child Psychiatry in NIMHANS, or perhaps it was a little before that. And for some reason, I was very concerned and preoccupied with children who, for whatever reason, gravitate out of, drop out of, or are forced out of school. These are children with mild intellectual disability, neurodevelopmental disorders, children who have learning issues, or children who have severe emotional or behavior problems because of which they are unable to attend schools, or children who are from adverse and vulnerable family circumstances. And I put in a proposal to actually collaborate with the National Institute of Open Schooling and use a certain space that we had in our inpatient facility to start a daycare center where, in addition to activity, we would also, offer education and other skill building processes. And I was quite surprised when the response that I got from my own system was that we cannot be doing this because we are a hospital. And here, friends, was my response. I said, excuse me, we are not only a hospital, we are an institute. We are not called the National Hospital of Mental Health and Neurosciences. We are called the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences. The hospital and clinical services are only one part of what we do. An institute has larger obligations to perform and larger obligations to meet. And this, friends, is what I think advocacy means. How much are you willing to push for and speak for children in public forum, in systems, in courts of law, so that the kind of marginalization and exclusion that sometimes takes place as a very routine process and often if you have the privilege and the resources, many people who have children with disability choose to go off to UK or Canada, because the facilities are, and this question has always bothered me, why cannot we have systems? Why cannot we advocate for systems and for resources and provisions and enablement and interventions that create a scaffolding for these children and also for their families to feel reassured that things are being taken care of there. So this is basically the context and the premise of Seema Girija Lal's story, which she will share with us. So this is not going to be a clinical session on neurodevelopmental disorders. This is going to be about a journey of advocacy in the context of disability to see as professionals which systems we should engage in, what are the frustrations and experiences that come with that engagement, and what are the processes that allow for a modicum of success to take place so that we create the opportunity for these children to access the kind of services and interventions that they justifiably and richly deserve. So this would be the premise of our talk. I would invite you also, as Seema addresses us, to keep your questions in mind, put them on chat, and we would be happy to address them. Seema would be happy to address them as well. And if Saurabh, our policy and law officer, has not joined us, oh, he has. Welcome, Saurabh. And on the context of advocacy, before Seema starts, are there any thoughts you'd like to share, Saurabh? Over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. I don't think I have much to add to the points I think you've already raised, and hopefully we learn more as ma'am speaks to us about what her work has really been in terms of creating an inclusive space, really in the context of children with neurodevelopmental disorders. I just wanted to make a limited point about how, in this context, while we also discuss the role that parents, caregivers, and families play in assisting children and providing them support, particularly children with neurodevelopmental disorders like autism spectrum disorder and other neurodevelopmental disorders, I think it's important to also talk about regulation, transparency, which is also something we're going to hear about today as ma'am speaks to us about her own journey with her organization, Together We Can. Many a times when we focus on specifically, I think, the conversations around care settings, there does seem to be a lacunae in conversation in terms of focusing on transparency in care settings and in dealing with children with disabilities. So hopefully we can learn more from ma'am as she talks to us about her journey with this and what her efforts and her organization's efforts have been towards ensuring that transparency not only includes the family in terms of providing support to children, but also ensure that there is some degree of regulation in spaces where children are being assisted, particularly children with disabilities. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Shekhar Seshadri. Thank you, Sheila, Saurabh, Priti, for all having me here. This is a privilege. And as Dr. Shekhar Seshadri said, I am here not to give any technicalities about any particular disability per se, but to share my journey as a mother, as an individual, as a woman, as a mental health professional, as an activist, the brickbats and the bouquets all in one, and where we are today. I think for me, the word transparency and inclusion, it never occurred that we had to work for it. It was supposed to be known. So it was thinking the other way around on how come things are not transparent and how come we are excluding. So I think my journey started with this question, and the question started from probably as a teenager, where my biggest emotion was anger at how things were not going right at home, or when you join college, you are taken for these visits in your first year of psychology to mental health clinics and special schools, and it didn't feel right that how come everybody is in one place and everybody looks very sad. And there was a huge knowledge gap of something is not right, something is missing, but this is how it is. I moved on to learn special education after psychology, and it was a special school in Chennai where there were caregivers coming. They had the best of professionals, I had the best teachers all along, but still the family, nobody knew what was happening at home. It was the child, the therapist, and there were a lot of equipments and everybody was happy. But I always wondered what would the mothers do after this 1 hour in a special school, maybe the half a day, in different speech therapy, to physiotherapy, occupational therapy, and then, but she seemed very happy. So there was a lot of gap of what is happening at home. This went on until I joined the Banyan, where on one hand, I was seeing where there are children who are at homes, who are now separate from homes and working in a very artificial setup. And the mother very clearly didn't know what to do at home, but that was not even a question. It was not even addressed. But the Banyan, it was the other extreme where we were working with people who were the homeless. So they were already on the streets. And then our aim was to put them back home. But then again, where the homes equipped, there was a huge gap. So again, it all felt right, but something was missing. Something was drastically missing. And not that I had any answers, but tons of questions and more questions, until finally when I left the country and after marriage and was in Dubai, and there it was the field word autism got introduced, which was just one sentence when I was studying, when I was graduating. I knew nothing, but it was just about if children arrange toys in a line and that's it, that nothing else. But then you go there and you learn more and more and more. So I was wondering if this is the books that we are learning, and this is the knowledge that is given to professionals. Where am I going to learn more about it? Which sources do I access? And then I started visiting homes in Dubai, because there the license was more strict and everybody was visiting homes and doing it technically legally, but that was how things happened there. But when I entered the homes and therapy was happening at homes, it changed. It was completely different from anything what I learned in the textbooks or what I saw in the special schools or clinics or anywhere else. And it was very, very different. And there was so much knowledge and skill, and a lot of support was accessible within the mother, within the grandmother who was there, with the parent. We could see the dynamics, and we were like, how come we are not utilizing this? How come this is not the norm? And how come nobody really knows either sides? And how come we are working so disjoint? And this hit harder when I became a mother myself. And with my first son, of course, he's 16 now, but then I was alone. I had all the knowledge, very much actively working with autistic children then. And within 3 months, I knew something was amiss. And then for me, I didn't have to go for a formal diagnosis. He didn't speak till until 4 years. But my biggest support that system was that I didn't have anybody to interfere. I didn't have a support system. My husband was away working. I had no help. So I had full 4 years. I had all the material, and I wasn't anxious. I wasn't sad. I wasn't shocked or because there was no sudden term that your child is autistic or nothing said. And for me, he was just my child. And we worked together on several skills. There were sensory issues. If I wear one type of clothing, he would cry. If it is cotton, he was okay. If I keep my slipper this way, he would cry. If it is straight, if it's okay. It was a lot of issues. And for me, I was more and more curious that, I am learning more with my son. And there was absolutely no anxiety. So I was wondering, how come when I visited the homes, the mothers were very sad and they were very disturbed, and they were banking on me as a professional for all the solutions. And I felt good about it, that, okay, here I am. You can do this. I was distributing books, giving the knowledge. And the equation was very, very much from the professional, I wouldn't say, I think I can still say the power struggle. Very clearly, I had the upper hand, or I thought I had the upper hand with knowledge, and they were at the receiving end. And at the same time, even when we work with children, we use the term caregiver. But when I became a caregiver or the mother of my child, I was not just giving. I was learning so much from my child. So he was also giving me a lot of knowledge on what works, what didn't work. So when such terminologies, everything I started questioning and started feeling, this is not something I did with the mothers when I was going to their home, because that was 1 hour of therapy. True, I would see 8 children a day from one home to the other. But when I had my child 24 hours, I knew that all the techniques, methods, strategies that I would tell the other mothers, I couldn't do it. I was exhausted. I was tired because I had the kitchen. I wanted some time away from my own child. I was very happy and I loved my child, but I needed a break. And a lot of things changed, a lot of improvisation. I realized that maybe I don't need so many flashcards. I could just use what was there available at home, which was easier. So I had the actual things. So, which was not so, because we were so taught to use these pictures and reward systems, and that was a school of thought which was who I worked under. So things really changed in that first 4 years with my own son, and today he wouldn't be formally diagnosed anywhere, and nowhere can I say this and everybody will say, no, you're getting it wrong. He was certainly not autistic then. Maybe not, and I'm not debating that either, but I knew what my first 4 years was. I came back to India again for schooling reasons, because I knew it wouldn't work there. And I joined a clinic. It was a psychiatric clinic here with a very leading doctor here who I really respected, who advocated very strongly for parenting. But again, it was a diagnostic center. So there would be children, we would do an IQ test, which didn't make any sense to me, but I had to do it. And after a while, I wouldn't do it when I would just say, okay, average range of intelligence, because these children were coming for exam accommodation. And they were so scared, these were time tests, the anxiety was high, verbal performance tests, so the time would be running out. And I said, this is not making sense. I know that the child can function. So it was like a conflict between, am I cheating the test or should I be truthful and go by exact what time I got? And it was very, very confusing. Again, more questions. From this state, from giving diagnosis didn't work. And I told the doctor that I don't want to do this. And he was most receptive. He said, it's okay. And we moved into working with the parents. So when the parent comes in, I would say, now you work. I am not working and you're not sitting there and observing. Let's do this together. Strangely, no mother wanted to learn. Everybody was scared. No, I don't want to mess with my child. You know better. So I was like, what is happening? How come? So initially, again, I was angry that, okay, these mothers must be lazy. This is why the child is not progressing. And I would have a wonderful program and the mothers would not want to work. So I knew there was something that I was doing wrong. That why did the mother find these things so difficult? Why wouldn't any mother, when I found working with my child so easy, what is happening? And these are extremely educated mother. I'm talking specifically of my experience in Kerala, because all the mothers were postgraduate, in very well in their careers. So it was not like mothers wouldn't understand what I was saying, but they were so convinced that I would do a better job and not them. And that 1 hour was enough. So this was again worrying. And by then I had my second born, and again, I couldn't balance both. And he was completely different. He would, again, if I go by a diagnostic model, he would have dyslexia and attention deficit. He wouldn't sit in one place. And it was two extremes I was having at home. And I quit and I said, no, I really have to focus. And then I wasn't happy. I really wanted the job. So I switched to a schooling system. So when my younger son was 2 years old, I started school and my older was 4. And the preschool, and I also joined there as a counseling consultant in the mainstream school, which had a very clear resource room where all the children who had disability certificates would be taken out and they would be cut. The PE periods, the physical education periods, the fine arts would be cut, the library would be cut, and they would be taught reading comprehension, spelling, and arithmetic, which they already struggled with in the mainstream. So, and these were children who loved to dance, who loved to play, and who did not really hate books, but they really wanted to read, but they would read different kind of books. They enjoyed the pictures. So I was there and didn't know how to, and I was in charge of doing whatever I could do. So I said, let us shut down this resource room, because it didn't look very resourceful at all, because the children were not happy because they were missing the play. But at the same time, when are we then going to support the children? Because the timetable is so packed. So I didn't have an answer to that. So what do we do? What do we do? So then let's work with the teachers. But the teachers were fully packed with timetable. So we started working with the few teachers who were okay. We started giving them, or what I thought was sharing knowledge, and we told them how to identify early. So it started with preschools, because that is where it was a school till grade 12. So with the preschool, where there was a young set of teachers most willing to learn, we thought, let's identify the children early and start working with them. But when the training was focused on the checklist, which was identifying children early for dyslexia or ADHD, within 1 month, almost the entire school got diagnosed. And I was like, no, there were so many referrals to the counseling departments. The parents were being called, and it was a mess. I said, no, this is not how we are going to be function. Every child was saying that, no, this child has a problem. So the teachers had the checklist. So then I knew this was, so we had to rethink, no, this is not happening, because the parents were getting angry. Why are you diagnosing, what is wrong with my child? We are teachers, so you do your job. It's your job to teach. So then this was not working. So we again revamped, no, the teacher training had to be different. So forget the diagnosis. We are going to work with all the children. Let us change this whole model that every child needs support. So we changed that whole thing. We said that all children are going to, we changed the name of the resource room and called it Skill Development Center, with this high hope that changing names would, calling something by a different name would feel better, but it didn't. But that also didn't really work. So we started training teachers, we started involving the parents, saying that, why don't you come along? And we had a few set of parents who were willing to come, and that change, it was when there was a beautiful partnership where the teacher felt supported by the parent felt supported by the teacher, and the child, we were not here trying to fix the child, but to really find out what worked with the child in the classroom. What additional, so we asked the mother, can you do this much of whatever little task, so that we don't have to pull the child out of the art or the dance? And some parents were okay, some were not. So we tried to make it really child specific. So actually there was individualized education program which had to include the parent, because until then an IEP was the teacher and the child, or the special educator and the child, and there was an IEP which nobody saw it. Definitely the parent would never see it. So we had to change that. It went on for a long while, but simultaneously when I left the clinic, all the mothers would continue to come, saying that they needed to know how to work with their children at home. So that was happening simultaneously, because they had kind of become friends by then. So in the weekends, I would see the parents, but then they kept coming. And I said, you are already going to therapy centers. All of them were going for occupational therapy, special education. They were meeting behavior therapists. So then why are you coming? So they said, no, but we don't know what's happening there. Because they are not allowed inside. So I was like, why wouldn't you be allowed inside? So there were different reasons. Said one of them said there was no place to sit. So I said, well, really, if there's no place, it's just like, what sort of a room that would be? Some said that it was the policy of the therapy center to not allow the parent inside. Some said that if I go inside, my child would cry. So I said, then how would you work with your child at home? No, I don't have to work because they will take care of my child. So I said, what happens the rest of the time? No, I have packed it up from one therapy to the other the whole day. So then I started asking. Till then, I was not really asking about what is happening at home. So then slowly they started talking to me about their marriages, which were failing, their relationship with their in-laws, their own careers, which they had stepped back from, their own mental health. And it opened up so much more than where my focus was reading or sensory issue. with that one child. And I said, we are missing so much in how I am working. And there was so much guilt and regret. And I didn't, and not again, not that I didn't have, had an answer or a quick fix solution to the mother, but it started with listening, where she was felt good that, okay, somebody is listening. So the whole thing was, why don't you ask to be let inside the therapy center? I'm sure maybe they will allow. But that didn't happen. It went on, and I said, okay, if they don't want, it's not my problem, because I was sure that there was nothing more that I could do. I would continue to say, why don't you try that? Why don't you try this? Some will work, some things don't work. They will tell me what works. So it was going on until slowly, over the past, say, from 2010 onwards, the stories that I hear from therapy centers got worse. So it became more, the expense started increasing. The mothers said they couldn't afford anymore. So the fathers were doing overtime, and the marriage, it was not getting any better. With every year passing, some children had marks on their hands, and the mother was not sure which therapy center, which therapist, because they were going in multiple places, so they were not very sure. Some were convinced that in Malayalam they say "Adi koduthu valathanam," which means I think they deserve some beating only. It's about disciplining, and this was told by the therapist. So they were okay with it. It's okay, we all hit children. So I said, in a therapy, so no, that's okay, just once, little one pinch here, there, it's okay. And the mothers were okay with it. So there was nobody who was not okay with it. So then what do I do? So then if I say, so I had one person who was a friend in the center, and I said, why is this happening in your center? Why can't you go and allow these parents inside? So she said, no, the mothers are not interested. If they come in, they will start interfering with the therapy. So I said, what do you mean interfere with the therapy? It's their child. No, they won't listen. The child will start clinging to the parent, and she will just not let go. So I said, don't you think then she needs to know? Because don't you think then what could be happening at home? Is this 1 hour enough? So that was like that. I don't know. But what can we do? We have to work with the child. We are not here to work with the parent. So I said, can we do this together? But that was not headed anywhere. Finally, it ended with, this is our policy decision. So then I started thinking, okay, who decides this policy? Then it was interesting that each center had its own policy, and no center was registered under any same body. Some were registered as business, some were tuition centers. So it was confusing. So until I kept asking one mother, please let us go file a petition. Not that I knew where to file a petition. I had no idea about law, nothing at all, but just that something had to be done without any idea what. Until one mother cited sexual abuse. She cried. I said, we have to report this. She said, no, we can't go to police. So they, like Dr. Sheshadri said, most of them ended up shifting the country. Or shifting districts or cities or states or therapy centers. So that was the problem solving, was if it doesn't work here, go somewhere else, because we can't fix this. And it was very frustrating. And my husband would I would have sleepless nights, but my husband would tell me, Seema, this is not for you, because I was getting angry. I was really, really angry with the professionals, with my own friends. And I was like, why is nothing, when I didn't know what to do. Until finally, unfortunately, or I don't know whether to say fortunately now, because one of the mothers whose child was going to a center broke his arm. It was not sexual abuse, and it was his arm, and it was a boy child. And the mother, I caught her at the right moment. I said, you have to please report this, at least it's an arm, we can't let it be. Instantly she agreed. I said, okay, I didn't want to waste any time. The moment she agreed, I didn't even check with the husband. I didn't know which lawyer. I had no clue lawyer. So I connected back with the Banyan, and they connected me to the Human Rights Law Network here. Went there, and I said, this is the thing. But the lawyers were working more on women's issues and child abuse issues, so disability. So the first thing was, why didn't the child say? I said, no, the children do not speak. So it was not known. So children are vulnerable, parents are vulnerable, a child with a disability, and we teach child safety rules as no, go, tell. Now here we are working with children who first cannot even recognize that this is a situation where they need to say no. Two is, if they could say no, they can't say no. Two is tell whom? There is nobody in the room. Who do they tell? And where do they go? How can they run away from the room? And the parents had 100% trust in what was happening, and it was accepted. So how are we going to teach children about safety when we had so many other parameters to cross, and where do we start training and who and how? So it was also to educate the lawyers on what I was asking, because whatever I was saying didn't make sense. So finally, we filed a petition to the Child Rights Commission saying that this is how it is. And so initially when we went there, they said, who is the affected party? Is it you? So I said, no. So where is the affected party? Nobody. So, but not a single parent would come. So I was like, so then where is the case? There is no case. So there is no petition. So this mother finally agreed that she's okay with writing about the case. And we decided that we have to talk about it. So that's how we had to create a WhatsApp group, and we didn't even know. We started labeling it as PIL, because first thing was case and public interest litigation, not that I had any idea what it meant. The lawyer mentioned the word. I said, okay, fine, whatever it is, we will do something. But then no parent joined except me and this one, because they said, no, we don't want any case. So we changed the name to, okay, let's just call it something like Together, and randomly the name Together We Can, and we just changed the WhatsApp group name Together We Can, and that's where we are still. And we filed the petition. Then it's a long story to quickly reach where we are. 2015, we filed the first petition, where the chairperson, then we were lucky to find one really good, I wouldn't say good, a great listener who really took time to listen to the mother, to me, and what we are trying to say, because we had so much to say, because it was not about this one child breaking the arm that was the issue, because we didn't want an action on that particular center, and that was not what we were trying to say. The main idea was it had to be transparent, and there had to be inclusion of the voices of all those who are working with the child. So the voice of the mother mattered. If the teacher is working with the child, what her experiences mattered. So the peer group experiences mattered. So everything had to matter. So this chairperson listened and she understood, but she said, Seema, what do we do? These therapy centers are placed everywhere. Under the hospitals, it would come under the health ministry. Under schools, it would come under the education ministry. Under special schools, it would come under social justice. So where are you going to file the petition? I said, I don't know. I really don't know. I just know that something has to be done. So the lawyer said, okay, we'll start with the commission. So she understood. We had hearings. And for the hearing, again, everybody got scared. No mother turned up. So I was sitting there without the affected party. And finally, I had to beg. And one mother came in and she said, this is the case. Otherwise, they would think I'm making it all up. And they said something is wrong with Seema, because maybe she wants to start a therapy center of her own and she's against everybody else. So technically, I was nowhere, neither with the professional group, nor was I a parent. So it's like, what is her motive? And after a point, even my husband asked, what is wrong with you? What is your motive? I said, I don't know, but this is not right. But I just had to do something. The petition from 2015, it took 1 year, and we started pushing the media, thinking that we would get more parent support. But some media reported very well. They were friends, but some media sensationalized it, where more parents got I see the question. Reactions from the occupational therapists and special educators were bad. I had a special troll page dedicated to myself, calling me all names. It was bad. It was really, really bad. And at that time, I didn't even have a PhD. So that was my turning point to say, oh my God, I cannot survive with this PG, because if they have to be taken seriously, because the Child Rights Commission had 14 member people reviewing this petition, and many of the people, one of them who strongly said that no, parents can't be included because the child will not cooperate, was a doctor. So then I decided, now how do I become a doctor, so somebody has to listen. So I approached the Banyan again and again, Vandana Vaishnavi, the founders there, and put me on to that. Is how I land up in Freyar University, and with same as Sheila's guide, Professor Yoska Bandas, and she was a savior. And when I meet her first, I said, this is the situation, and I'm so angry. So the first thing is, Seema, you have to stop being angry with everybody. We have to channelize this anger, because for me, advocacy meant, activism meant just get angry. And that I knew that was not wrong, but I didn't know what else to do. So she introduced me to transdisciplinary research, where she wanted to know, why do you think the therapists are not letting them inside? So there was like, why? Understand that perspective, understand every perspective. But for me there, it was like, no, I will only understand the child's perspective and the mother. So, but then that was also not true. Advocacy also means, if we need to get everybody together, there must be some reason what is happening there. So that changed the whole scenario, and I stopped fighting for a change. And then, of course, we had to, fighting became more of RTIs. I think I have filed at least 100 RTIs by now, all 36 states, twice already done. The Child Rights Commission did pass a good order saying that every district in Kerala had to have a district level committee to regulate the therapy centers. But this order never, the governments changed. So we kept meeting the then government, the minister. Getting appointments were difficult. So the meetings would be in Trivandrum, which is another district. I'm in Kochi, and they would let us know the meeting is tomorrow. So then we wouldn't go. And unfortunately, the online system was not there. So it didn't work. So we would miss the meeting, and they would say you didn't attend. So it was so difficult until we knew the right people. It was just not working. And finally, we got to know the right people. It took years. Finally, in 2020, we filed the PIL, and the case also kept getting pushed because we had floods in between. So the government would say, no, now we are working on floods, or we're working on Nipah virus, or we are working on everything else except this. So, but we had excellent advocates. So the PIL was heard, and to our plight, the final order which ruled in favor was June 2020, and time, the pandemic. So then the order is still not, the PIL is through, but we still don't have district level committee. So then the next round of RTI is happening, saying what is happening. So we're going ahead, filing it in the Supreme Court. Hopefully, if all goes well, it should happen in April. We found advocates there. Again, none of them are charging. That was the biggest luck. I did not have to spend any money other than the RTIs. All the people who supported were doing free of cost, but it is a task to find the right person in every place. So that's where we are. But in between, there were other issues coming up, which was not related to child. It was domestic violence. So somewhere a trust was built on, if you go to Together We Can, they will do something, as though we knew exactly what we were doing. As though we had full power over the media. No, we didn't. But we just had to go and find the right people everywhere and literally beg, please write about this, please write about. So it was everybody, it was really getting everyone together. So it was not easy. It's still not easy. But I think if not us, who will do it? We have the knowledge. So my thesis, yes, finishing the PhD was another thing, because otherwise the professional groups would have literally buried me alive, saying that I don't know what I'm talking about. So I needed to be Dr. Seema's to be heard. So this is what, so unfortunately, to be heard, to be seen, where are the lived experiences? This I'm talking about my lived experiences, despite not being the affected party. I had the energy for this. But then how would you expect any mother or a child to go through this when they don't have the backing of the knowledge or the skill or the support? So now when I work, when the pandemic hit, I had to take the same school that I worked in, changed rules, and mental health was not, everything moved online, and suddenly our children were left behind. And what happened to the children with disability? How are they going to cope with online? It didn't matter to anybody. So again, I was still in the angry mode at that time. So I quit my job. I withdrew my children. I started homeschooling them. And that was my final year of PhD. And it was thanks to Yoska, who would call me every day. And this is how we had to get I think all of them are advocates in some way to get the going, writing the theses, because it had to come through. And I had to say that, okay, I know what I'm talking about. And these papers now these papers need to be published. Now, again, all this experiences has to be validated by 2 or 3 peer reviewers. Only then this will be heard. So it's such a process, but I have not given up yet. And but I hope, like Dr. Shekhar Seshadri started off, if institutes with the privilege, with the knowledge and the so much of resources take on advocacy. And I think if we all come together, I'm presuming all our professionals and the knowledgeable people here, if we all do that together, I'm sure we can do so much more. And I think that is how I will conclude. And I would say SAMVAD was a nice name, which when people ask me what methodology you follow, I say, no, I don't know. Is it RDI? Is it ABA? Is it CBT? I said, I don't know. I discuss with the parent, I discuss with the client, and we decide and we do that together. So SAMVAD was a nice name, that it's all about discussion, and let's learn from each other and co-create knowledge. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Seema Girija Lal. The point that is being made here, and a very critical point, is dialogue, or the obligation to basically advocate for families and the children that come from these families is an important obligation that, sometimes we forget in particularly those of us who've been in institutions, in the kind of institutional and academic cultures that we exist in, forgetting that there is a reality out there which is very different from the realities that are in the textbooks of mental health. That my team has been very kind to me in the SAMVAD website, where they prominently put something that I happen to have said many years ago, that child mental health does not exist only in textbook of child psychiatry. It exists to all those spaces that children occupy and inhabit, homes and childcare institutions and so on. So this has been a very critical session. And Seema, I believe that notwithstanding the numbers in the session, because it will be there on our channel, that we will be inviting people to see this, because this journey is exceedingly critical for people to recognize that we can get lost sometimes, as you pointed out, in this whole checklists and labels and the IEP paradigm. I'm not against them. This is not to vilify checklists or diagnostic labels or individual education programs. That is not my intention. And I believe that was not your intention either, that they are important in their place. But sometimes they become more important than the child in question. And I have taken the liberty, Seema, as you were speaking, to kind of paraphrase some of the things that you had said. Transparency and inclusion should have been a given, but unfortunately, that was not the case. The ecologies of children's lives. What is the ecology of the special center? What is the ecology of the home? What is the reality that plays out there? Particularly if you look at center-based and home-based approaches, and the kind of richness that can exist in home-based approaches, and parents are often not aware that there's so much of richness there which they do not recognize as, because you're so programmed towards this entire school, the syllabus, the routine, the timetable, the language and all that there is a world beyond that. And I particularly liked what you said as people who work with these children, parents, who have a learning approach, and not that you're delivering something, but you're equally learning that you position yourself in a way and this is truly anthroposophic. And friends, in our past sessions also, we've spoken so much about Rudolf Steiner and the anthroposophic approaches in residential communities of adults with intellectual disability and education and so on. And look at the challenge in Seema's question. How resourceful really are the resource rooms? So it's not checklists, labels, and IEPs, but collaborative work within the lived experiences of families, of mothers. And what happens often in these centers, as she has pointed out, is that the exclusion extends to parent systems. No, you can't come in. You stay outside, we'll do whatever. So, often when parents come to a doctor and they go to a special center and you ask them, so where are they going and what do they do? We don't know, because they don't allow us inside. How can you maintain this mystery? There's nothing mysterious going on there. And as Seema has pointed out, often the mystery that goes on there, particularly for a child with a neurodevelopmental problem who has challenging behaviors, are sometimes aggression. And the reality there is bruises and cuts. And therefore, what has angered Seema, and indeed, friends, what should anger us, is the helplessness that sometimes compels parents to submit to the hegemony of these fixed types. You pay this money, you register, leave the rest to us then. And we don't know what happens inside. Therefore, if you get into an advocacy role, find yourself a good person there. Someone who's a good listener, like, she found this good member of the committee. Use RTI strategically and usefully. And as questions are coming in of appreciation, comments of appreciation, Seema, Preeti Galgali, who's a very, very close friend of ours, a developmental pediatrician, an adolescent health practitioner who speaks about your amazing work and appreciates you. And she wants you to share a little more about the components of the PIL. And I'll come to the next couple of messages. So Seema, what were the components of the PIL?
Yeah. The first one was parent inclusion, that, the no to closed door therapy was our first thing, that, if at all the child was inside and for some reason the parent couldn't join, there had to be either CCTV cameras or one-way screens, but the cheaper option was to let the parent in. So that was our key prior to the court. The next was documentation. There were no documentation at all, because it was just like medical doctor's prescription which was there. The goal would be like a single right, sitting, eating, that's it. So what is the mother going to do with all this when she moves from one center? There was nothing. So documentation, transparency, including the parent training had to become mandatory. Fees, there had to be a fee cap on some kind of a regulation. So regulating therapy centers being the first goal, but under that, these were the main things. But our main prayer, what we kept focusing on was this. But unfortunately, when the committee was formed and the draft came, they would also put in infrastructural requirements. And that is when this becomes the smaller goal, and everybody is looking at how many fans and tables and this is what we were asking for. So that's the next challenge, when they come up with guidelines, they came up with everything, including infrastructure. But our main was transparency and inclusion.
Seema, Surovi is a fellow practitioner. She's a psychiatrist with deep interest in child work. And remember, you referred to the whole issue of abuse on the one hand, sexual abuse, physical abuse, the fracture that you spoke about. So this coming across instances of child abuse, beyond closed doors, that she alludes to. Any thoughts, Seema, the various elements? See, we have physical abuse fractures. we have sexual abuse we may or may not know. In fact, there's a PhD thesis done from the Department of Nursing in NIMHANS on how you can work with children with intellectual disability on resistance and child sexual abuse prevention. But even in usual or average child psychiatry, no one ever speaks about emotional abuse. And then you assume that if you tell a child who has a disability, that you idiot, or you'll never learn, that it's okay because they won't see. If you feel they won't understand, then why are you using such terms to denigrate them? I've never been able to understand this issue, and I'll give you an example. There was this example of someone with moderate plus to severe intellectual disability with severe challenging behaviors. And the caretakers or whatever used to use punitive measures. I asked them, why are you doing this? They said, it's all right because, he won't understand, she won't understand. I said, if they don't understand, why are you doing it? You're doing it not because it is going to affect any changes. This is a manifestation of your frustration. This is unfair, unethical, and abusive. Even children with severe to profound disability have a sentience. They have a personhood, they have consciousness. And that's where, when we speak of sensory work and body work with these children, which we call in Hindi as Kriya, Prakriya, and Pratikriya. Kriya is yog, doing. Prakriya is process, and Pratikriya is response. Whether it is massages or whether it is movement or whether it is some sound, because they have sentience. They may not understand what you're saying. They may not speak. They are not walking. They are not ambulant, but they can sense. They can feel. So that's the kind of stuff that. So Seema, any thoughts? Further thoughts on abuse?
Yes, Dr. Shekhar Seshadri, not only with children with disabilities, I think generally we see child as somebody that needs to be taught and disciplined, and or correction is the norm, even in parenting, regular parenting, and even in schools. It's very rarely is there a collaborative approach with any child. So it's always based on, we have to tell the child what's to be done and continuously correct. So even this terminologies like idiot or fool, it's like generally it's like it's like accepted that that's how they behave. So emotional abuse, it's like, when are we ever going to get there is what I'm thinking by, because the larger ones are the sexual abuse, physical abuse. We're still there, including punishments in schools. How is a punishment met for any child? So I think emotional abuse is across all children. It is like there. I mean, I haven't even got there to think about how do we work on that. Maybe some even with parenting, when none of us become parents with knowledge on how to raise a child. So who is educating? And there is no license required to become a mother, but to work with your child, you have to have license. So it's easy for many teachers to say, oh, this child, I don't know how to work with because I have no license. But, so that is again creating segregation. There has to be some way where everybody needs to know basic dignity of human beings, and children have that right. It's just a basic right, which is denied. And it is sad because our children cannot voice. The other children will at least voice after a point of time. That is the sad.
Yep. So, Seema, there are a couple of other issues that have come up. Yet another question is, could you share with us your personal experience with homeschooling? not just in the context of disability and so on, but this entire controversy about education itself, and many parents' disaffection and disenchantment with the usual schooling systems. I'm homeschooling my child, what a crappy education system and all that. So what has your personal experience been with homeschooling?
Yeah, schooling, I started homeschooling only in 2020 when things shift, when it got from bad to worse, when the online shift happened. So my older one was in grade 7 and younger one had just finished grade 4 then. And the younger one was anyway a misfit in the school. He was going there only to play. So it had to be the first 3 months we were only exploring. There were no subjects, nothing. There was no decision of whether NIOS or no syllabus at all. Let's figure out what we want to learn. So initially it was, it had to be really, really individualized. And as of now, today, my older son is writing his board exam tomorrow. He has his 10th board exam tomorrow. And my younger one, more than homeschool, he had to fit into syllabus because he was scared. He decided that, no, Amma, I want to write an exam, because he was scared that he will not be part of the rest. But my younger one is pretty much clear that he does not want to go to school. So his is more of an unschooling where there is no specific syllabus per se, but it's more into skills. So a lot of work at the home, reading, more of skills like reading, all that is happening, more of self-learning. But because he again needed some books, we are mixing, matching different books from CBSE and iOS. It's not really planned. There is 1 hour of sitting with a program. Rest is what he chooses. So there is swimming, there is some writing. It's more of unschooling happening for the younger one because I'm still exploring there. But the older one is very clear. He wants to do the exam. So went by what the child wanted.
I love the word unschooling. Another comment of appreciation, Seema, from Purnima, if I'm not mistaken, is the same Purnima whose MPhil doctoral work was actually on lived experiences of siblings of children with autism. And she has published as well. And I will send you the link later. And she says, thank you for sharing your story. Very inspiring, reminds me to move beyond the sense of helplessness that I often encounter as a professional and a student while navigating various systems, and to consistently work towards making a change. Now, a comment from a developmental pediatrician who could relate to your anger. Her own journey into being a developmental pediatrician started from the same anger, with the collaborative child unit, the CCDD in Bangalore. So they have a structured parent-mediated training. It's called a scope edit program, and all parents compulsorily are with the child for at least 1 month, during which the parents work with the child along with a developmental pediatrician or a therapist. It's sort of so the parent wellness program to take care of their mental well-being. And so they have a long way to go, but they are working the long direction. Pretty much resonating, Seema, with what you said, that it's not about just putting them in. I don't know what happens, that they'll deal with it. They go from center to center, or doing a lot of stuff on their own. But, this whole triangulation that you spoke about, the child, the therapist, and the family working as a system together, that would be. Seema, the thesis that you spoke about, lived experiences, some key results with your work with mothers with children, some highlights?
Yeah, it was in parts of the first paper was about from childbirth to the mother noticing differences and the vulnerabilities which prompted her to use or seek support of technology. So again, with the pandemic, it was a thrust from education also to use technology, but how much of knowledge were the mothers using it as an informed choice, or were they using it because they did not know how else to teach the child or how else to engage the child? So there were multiple reasons that came off, and most of them who initially said that, yes, my child learned better, and yes, my child would sit or eat food because they were using many mothers mentioned speech improvement. So we compared that with what the literature said. The literature also had not much about the age from 0 to 3 years on exactly whether is it really improving speech or is it language, and how exactly do most of it is talking about co-viewing. So there is a lot of knowledge gap there in this, how to use technology. It's true that we can't now say no, don't use, but then most of the mothers were not making an informed choice. That is where, and many mothers mentioned that they realized that they in fact even went to a doctor because when the technology was taken away, the child would have display a lot of aggression, and that's how finally they ended up with a diagnosis. So a lot of unknown was there, and many mothers were using it as a crutch and not as an informed choice. So there the result was, we certainly need more research on how best can we use this, and not yes or a no, but how. That needed to be studied. That was the first. The second paper was more on from noticing differences to getting a diagnosis, what was happening within the family. Most of the mothers mentioned that their initial concerns were dismissed by pediatricians. A lot of them mentioned that it's okay. Weight was given to almost 1 year. A lot of mothers mentioned that was a gap where they went from one doctor to the other. Mostly they consult the family doctors first and they say it's okay, wait. First the family says wait, then the doctor says wait. And 1 year is gone, and finally then the diagnosis. The gap was very crucial, and not only wait, but nobody was telling her what to do with her anxieties. The anxieties were completely dismissed. So if the mother is going there saying, my child is not sitting, it's okay, or my child is not speaking, it's like dismissed that it's okay. But what can I do then to work? That was not shared. So it looked like an intervention can be shared only if there is a diagnosis. So that was the second phase. The third was about getting the diagnosis itself and the therapy centers, which of course I've already mentioned, it was not transparent, not included. So it was the experience of the mother shared was almost comparable to the Kubler-Ross's grief model, where you experience grief like that of losing a loved one. So that was the grief that the mothers were going through. The stages were similar initially, and of course it extended beyond, and how the professionals can actually turn it around through collaborative work, and how it could help her agency. That was a second. The next was the inclusive education phase, which was the schooling years. Again, the mother's knowledge was completely excluded. She would be the one teaching the child, but she would not be included in the class. Finally, most of the skills that the children learned, like even now, most of the skills that we see showcased were not taught by the teachers or the therapists. It's painting or art. If you see that, it was the mothers who pursued that, and that's what we see now projected. It was what the mothers figured out by focusing on a strength-based model. But the school was mostly on, these are the skill deficits, pull the child out, work on the skill deficits. So instead, if we knew what the skills were, work on that. So I think I read a poster somewhere, if I don't know who said it, but it said that if my son were bad in math and was good in table tennis, I wouldn't hire a math tutor, but hire a table tennis coach instead. So it was not a strength-based model we had. That was the inclusive education phase. And the last was the journey of Together We Can, about advocacy, and how it was 3 mothers who finally joined me in the process, and how they, if supported, they can really voice for themselves. So advocacy is not about giving a voice because somebody can't voice, but knowing that everybody has a voice, and we just have to get them to speak. So that was the last one, where how it was a collaborative effort of all stakeholders had to be involved, how we all can be change agents, and a combination of a community of practice, how to get that going. So that was the final paper. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I think all of what Seema Girija Lal has presented and all that she has shared in the latter part of this session also covers the points made by Surovi when she speaks about these violations of child rights arising sometimes out of ignorance at all levels. And that's what advocacy means, that how do you really work without a top-down, patronizing or supercilious approach, but to work collaboratively and proactively with systems that can make a change to address this ignorance. And Divya, indeed, as it applies to autism, it would apply equally to children with seizures or with spasticity or with intellectual disability. That this was the whole point of this session. Semalal, a great privilege to have you on this session. I must also say that while we have not had an extraordinary number attending the session, but people who will see the recording will pick up, and SAMVAD takes the responsibility of disseminating the wonderful information that you have presented. But I must say that the fact that we started with a certain number and that number did not even decline 5% during your presentation is, I think, not just an evidence, but an affirmation to the importance of your work and the importance of this area, and how advocacy needs to be something that all of us as professionals need to consider as part of our life path as professionals, and not be satisfied just at checklists, labels, and IEPs. I hand you over to the SAMVAD team to close the session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shekhar. Saurabh, any last quick comment from you before I close?
Thanks, Sheila. Just one small point, I think, which came out quite beautifully in ma'am's presentation today, which is that transparency and inclusion are not ancillary. It's not just transparency for the sake of transparency or inclusion for the sake of inclusion, and then therapy happens separately. I think the point that ma'am was also making, especially with her experiences with the resource centers, where they were doubling down, they were excluding PE classes, art, doubling down on a certain way of learning that wasn't really contributing to helping children adjust, to helping them overcome some of their issues to begin with. So even from a therapeutic standpoint, and as Dr. Seshadri mentioned, an anthroposophic perspective, it is important to include, I think, the supportive parts of children's ecologies, particularly children with disabilities. And ma'am has, of course, done a lot of work with children with autism, for example. There is no cure, but if the point is to improve quality of life and to improve issues with communication or behavioral challenges, then transparency and inclusion, particularly of their main support systems, including their parents, is actually key to the therapeutic process, not ancillary. So I think that's a useful point for all of us to remember. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thanks, Saurabh. Once again, Seema, thank you very much for joining us this evening. What a delight. And I believe everyone would agree that it was quite a different kind of session. The stories were wonderful and truly inspiring. We hope that SAMVAD will have an opportunity again to hear you on other forums, perhaps SAMVAD's own forums. We would love that. We do a lot of disability-related work. Thank you once again for your time. Thank you, Dr. Shekhar, as always, for chairing, Saurabh for joining us, and of course, all our friends on the session. Thank you very much for being part of Monday Moods with SAMVAD. We bring you another interesting series in May, so do watch out for that. In the meanwhile, stay safe, stay well, and have a good evening. Good night from all of us at SAMVAD. Thank you.
Thank you.